So this right here that I'm sitting in now, this has been in production with some modifications since 1970s or so. And this is basically what we call our classic comfort collection. And what identifies classic comfort collection is a couple different things. Number one, it has a separate ottoman. And of course, that chair reclining part. And then they all come with wood bases, okay? And that's the classic comfort collection. It comes in two different sizes. We have a small and we have a large. And when you talk to your consumers and so on and so forth, I think it's so important that you engage them in a way where they experience really what we're all about, comfort. Well, comfort is achieved by fitting people in the proper size and function. So having those different sizes is very, very important. Typically, what I try to suggest is that you sit people down like this because, again, I can talk until I'm blue in the face, but until you get people to interact with the product, they're not really going to understand what it really means to be super comfortable, okay? So the first thing is you invite them to sit down. The next thing you do is you make sure that this little knob right here, which is a tension knob, make sure it's loose so the chair moves back and forth freely, okay? And it's loose, and so and then of course the footstool itself is an integral part of the seating system, okay? And what I mean by that, until you get your feet up, you're not really going to feel the comfort and the fit of the chair. So one of the questions that we get a lot is why do you have a separate ottoman? The real reason why we have a separate ottoman is that we all have different size bodies and torso to feet is different size, and if you have a separate ottoman, you can adjust it so it fits your body frame, okay? Next thing I just want to point out to you is that the top of our ottoman is sloped forward. How it's sloped down, but it fits the contours of his body, okay? So it provides him with good comfort. You see how the front of the seat comes up a little bit, so his knees break naturally here, so this shape contours to his body. Again, that's not by accident, it's by design as a way to make sure there's ideal comfort. So right here, I'd like to point out, we have a little disc here that connects the bottom base to the yoke underneath the seat, which ensures easy swivel, so it's very, very easy to swivel. We have this little knob. It goes into a single stem that's underneath the seat, and this is really a tension knob. It's really intended to put in tension on this, so you move back and forth with minimal resistance, or you could say in a different way that the chair follows you in a natural movement. Okay. Now, why do we have that, and why is that important? It's important because the gravity is the same for all of us. However, we all have different sizes and weights, so basically the tension knob is a way to adjust for weight, okay, and let gravity do the work. So you find, wherever it's comfortable, it sort of follows you naturally back and forth. A question I get a lot is when I do this, during my sales training is, why sit him in the small chair first and a large one next? And again, there's no right or wrong way of doing this, really. I just find it easier as a consumer to explain the whole concept of proper fit and comfort and feel is that if you are in something that's too small at first, it's so much easier to find a proper fit. I often try to sort of put people in what might be obviously the wrong size, have them sit there, do the initial spiel, talk about the company and whatnot, and then switch them, because then at that point when I say it's different size, they actually get it because they feel it, as opposed to just hearing me say it. Because one thing is to say it is a different size, but boy, there's nothing like feeling the right size. That's when a relatively expensive product all of a sudden makes sense, because if it gives that, it brings value to the consumer. So now it's a little bit more about how the products are actually made. I just want to show you guys a feature that's built into these products, and I find the easiest way to demonstrate is simply this. I recline back and I push my hand right here. You see the angle here changes, right? It's sort of straight up and down here, and all of a sudden it pivots up and it comes up and supports the back of your head. Now, this is what we call an active release headrest, and the whole point of that is you can active release this at any given time, okay? So in other words, it articulates up, and then you can override it as you see fit anywhere. We have so many different models, as I talked about earlier, and this one just happened to have this little pillow. It's loose and put in. It's just another little component of optimized personal comfort. You can obviously move that up and down, and let's say you don't like it all, you can take it off and not use it. Now I just want to talk a little bit about what is it that makes a Fjords Classic Comfort so darn comfortable, assuming you get people in the right size. And that's all about what's in the inside. So this is super, super important when you talk to your consumer, because you have to explain something they can't touch and feel, they can't see it, okay? It's all on the inside. So what I want to start with, I want to start at the base up, or from bottom up. So what we have here in the base, this is solid wood, it's laminated wood. So this is basically ply. So we take plywood and we shape it into shape, and I think there's 22 layers of ply here. This is actually rubber wood, and that's because we manufacture these in Thailand, and rubber wood is indigenous to that part of Asia. So here on the chair base, same thing. It's just slightly more layers of ply. Okay, we have this base. We have this little bridge right here is elevated. Instead of going flat across, it provides us a little bit additional strength for the base, so it doesn't break with use. This is the little self-enclosed that allows it to swivel that we talked about. Here is the center shaft that you can use the knob to tighten it. So in the inside here of the seat and the back, we basically use what's called, well, we refer to it often just as cold cure foam. You know, technically speaking, what we should call is actually cold cure, because it's high quality and it gives us an ability to make things that last for a long time, but also contoured in a way that we want it, okay? So, but it's a little hard to explain sometimes, so what I'll actually do now is just tell you a little bit about what regular foam is. So regular foam is basically where you mix a number of liquid chemicals and you pour it into a form or a tray, if you will. It looks like a big bread tray. And there's, I guess you can call it a gassing process, where these little air bubbles are constructed in this liquid and then rise towards the top. It rises up to 10 feet. It was only 5 feet or so when the process started, okay? And that's how you make regular foam. And typically foam like that, goes in and the consumer sits on it, you get in and out, and you compress the foam a little. And every time you do, a few of these air pockets, they actually pop, okay? It's not really a defect, it's just how foam is designed and made. So there's nothing wrong with it, but over time, with enough compressions and use, basically, the foam loses its resiliency, means it does not bounce up to an original shape. So regular foam that's used in upholstery typically is 1.8 density. You've heard that, you probably said that. I don't know if you ever really thought about what that really means. 1.8 is basically 1.8 pounds per square foot, or cubic foot rather. So let's talk about cold cure foam instead, which is what's inside these products, okay? So the cold cure foam and cold cure or molded foam is really created in a different way. It's where you actually built a mold for every single seat and back. So for example, I mean, this product right here, right? This is a mold and that's a mold. And this is the primary reason why most manufacturers don't do it this way, because it is costly to make mold. The mold is made in a certain way for a certain desired fit, comfort, size, so every mold is different, okay? But what it also is, it allows us to customize the comfort for every single model of seat, okay? And it's very hard to explain because every mold is a little bit different. But the way I usually put it is that, think of a smiley face. With a mold, right, you have the ability to make it like a smiley face, okay? Which really means this. As you sit down in the center of a chair, the proper fit, size, then it sort of comes up and it sort of hugs the side of your butt and your back, and it feels super comfortable. You still feel so supported. That's assuming, of course, you get in the right size. If you're in the wrong size, you may not feel that. So it's all about fitting people in the right size first. But that's what you can do with cold cure molded foam, because you can mold it so a certain desired feel and size. So we make these molds, and they're basically cut in half, and the top and the bottom half. And then we take the tubular steel construction inside, and we put it in, and we pour in the liquid, and we close the mold, okay, and it cures cold, hence why it's called cold cure foam. Because it is constrained by the mold itself, they can't go beyond the constrained mold itself, the density is higher. So here is really the net result of that process, that when it's done, it's a much higher density. Remember I told you that regular upholstery foam is 1.8? Well, our cold cure foam typically ranges from 3 to 4 pounds density, okay? So what does that mean? It means there are fewer air pockets in the foam itself, which means it doesn't break down as much. So why is that important when it comes to our product, or any recliner for that matter? It requires enormous quality to make sure they last for let's say 10, 12, 15, 18 years, depending on how you take care of the leather, okay? And that's why cold cure foam is so important. So to sort of recap it, you can't see it, you can't touch it, but you have to talk about it, because when a consumer goes in and want to buy this product, they need to know what's on the inside, because that's the chief benefit for them of cold cure foam, is that it'll last easily 10, 12, 15, 16 years or so, whereas a regular foam will not. There's no way regular foam with that amount of use is going to last that long. There's just no way. Now I want to talk a little about the molded part. When I say molded, it means that it's thicker certain places and it's thinner, and on the sides it's thicker, and so on and so forth. You can see that when you look at this foam, okay? So here in the lower lumbar, we have a lot more. We have 2 to 3 times as much foam here, and that's because the mold bumps out down there, okay? Now, so I want to just talk a little bit about what's on the inside of this mold itself. This is robotically bent steel, or tubular steel, okay? And as you see, it is actually powder coated. And one thing people ask me, like, well, why on earth are you powder coating this before you even put it inside the mold? That seems like a wasted effort. The reason is that should moisture and whatnot build up, we want this to be fully finished, so there is no rust. Because if it rusts or oxidizes, then that will create a little particle and grind down the foam on the inside, which would then decrease the lifetime of the product. So this is a little detail that we do to make sure the product lasts a long time. And then we talked a little bit about the active release headrest. Here you see how it's really put together. And then for basic suspension, we use what's called sinear springs. A lot of people call them no-sack. It's really, technically speaking, it's called sinear springs, but the same thing. We put that here in a seat, okay? So that's the basic construction. One thing that's sort of interesting, just keep in mind, remember I said that you take the frame and you put it inside the mold and you close the mold and you inject the foam, right? Well, you see how this is baked in the middle of the foam, okay? A couple of things. Number one, it allows us to do the cold cure technique or method that I told you about. But what also it happens is that since reclining is all about motion, moving parts, because it's baked in, chances of these moving parts actually getting out of place and out of alignment is very, very small. It's not particularly well suited to sit directly on, because it's sculpted well, but it's very, very hard. So what we do is we use polyurethane, or hollow fibers rather, polydacron fibers on top. So it's either a combination of regular foam, cut foam that's glued on top, and the fibers on top, or just fibers on top. Depends a little bit on the model, okay? But that's what we see. So cold cure foam, regular foam, fibers, and then leather on top. And so that's really how we go from the inside to the outside of the chair. So